We're taking all the best old school wisdom and blending it with the top new school methods to bring you the optimal coaching strategies. This is the 80-20 Baseball Podcast with Coach Bo.
Welcome, everybody. Welcome, all of you that are making your way to being better coaches. Welcome. The first step is to get a clear path to how to be a better coach, a better version of ourselves out there on the field so we can be better for our players. We can get their skills better, faster. We can have a much more fun environment. We can use baseball as a vehicle to getting them to being better people, better adults down the road, and along the way, win more games. Episode 150 coming at you. Episode 150. Fired up to be here. You know what fires me up also is getting great emails from all of you coaches. I woke up again this morning, Saturday morning email coming from a great coach out there in Illinois. You know who you are. Reached out with some very nice, kind words and also some questions about getting ready for the upcoming season. So always love to hear those kind words coming from all of you. Hey, I know this stuff works. It's awesome when I hear it from all of you, when I get emails that say, yes, we've been using this stuff. It works. It's been working. We love it. Thank you. That to me is something that motivates me to bring all of you the best information that we can get together from the coaching community, the coaching world, all the wisdom, and put it together on a clear, streamlined path, an efficient path to being great coaches. In this episode, I'm going to share out an email that I got from my own kids' soccer league. And wow, they hit a home run with these 5 steps, the 5 steps to being a better parent of a youth sport athlete, a youth athlete, but also these are great for coaches too. This is a great 5-step guideline for coaches. I'm going to read that out. Part 3 of our 3-part series, words that often decrease success. Coaching words that often decrease success. So we're getting into part 3 today, and I have a little surprise, a little bonus. I got 2 bonus tips that I'm going to slide into part 3. Today, we're going to wrap up the 3-part series of words that often decrease success, coaching words that decrease success. And I'm going to throw out 3 tips today, 3 things, 3 items that we need to talk less about so we, our teams, our players can have a lot more success. Reviewing last week's episode, if you haven't listened to it, go back. A pregame tip was given for all your starting pitchers, a quote from Seth Godin about being a leader and not a manager. And last week in part 3, we covered part 2 of our words that decrease success, coaching words that decrease success, talking about the score. And that was the topic discussed last week. The email I got that I received from my kids' soccer league. I'll tell you what, I was out there, and I think I shared this with you a few weeks, maybe 3 weeks ago. I was out there after a practice and I was discussing with the coach, the soccer coach who runs these youth soccer groups, teams, practices, games. And I asked, hey, what's your philosophy? What are the most important things when you're out here? So I just asked him saying, hey, what's your main purpose out here? What's your main goal? What are your main goals out here? And he just right away said, fun. I want the kids to have fun. I want them to have a good time and learn some skills, but they got to have fun first and then the skills come second. But I always want them to learn at least 1 skill every practice or work and get better at 1 skill every practice. But the non-negotiable is that I want them to have fun. When they leave, I want them coming back. I asked them about the retention rate and I said, hey, your retention rate looks phenomenal. I see a lot of these teams out here and it seems like the same kids coming back out every single season. He said, absolutely. He goes, we have a retention rate through the roof. In fact, almost every kid comes back unless they graduate out in terms of age, they move on, they're too old for it, or they move out of the area. But they also sent an email out to the parents. And here are the 5 guidelines, 5 recommendations that they gave the parents of the players. Number 1, avoid coaching from the sideline during practice and games. An example of that is yelling for them to pass, etc. Number 2, do not criticize the ref or the coach. If you have any concerns, please wait until after the practice, game, and or contact the office manager who will help connect you to your coach. So don't criticize the ref or coach. Now, I have a slight disagreement with the way it's written here. I would add something if I were them to this one. And again, this is actually the only thing I would have altered a little bit on this message to the parents. I would have said, do not criticize the ref or coach. Great. If you have any concerns, please wait until after the practice or game to talk to the coach or contact the office manager. I would have something added here. I would say, unless it's urgent urgent. And then I would give some examples of urgent: injury, bullying, safety concerns. I would just put that. And I know that's probably understood, or maybe they think it's understood, but I definitely would make it clear, like, these things can be discussed or should be discussed immediately, and the rest of it can wait. And there really are only a few things. It's typically the well-being or safety of the player or players. It's not their skill development or their technique or any of that. So that's just a little caveat that I would put. And you can borrow these 5 and you can put them in to your preseason message to parents. And that's really a big reason why I'm sharing this. These 5 really, I think, cover pretty much everything. And again, if you try to have a list of 10, you're going to have a list of none. And a lot of you know exactly what I'm talking about. You want to have less to have more. If you have a list of 10 rules, you really don't have any rules, because nobody's going to remember all 10. Complexity dilutes the message, dilutes the purpose and the results. Cover the big needle movers and address the little one-offs when the time comes, or on a case-by-case basis. Number 3, focus on the benefit/effort versus the score. This is awesome. Focus on the kid having fun, on their effort, on the benefit versus the score. Number 4, cheer your child and their peers on during the games. They love to hear your support. If all you ever do is cheer for another player or other players and not your kid, or vice versa, all you do is cheer for your kid, your child, and not other players, we got to balance it out a little bit more. Doesn't have to be an equal amount. It doesn't have to be a quota or anything like that, but you know where I'm coming from with that. Number 4, cheer your child on and their peers, their teammates, on during the games. They love to hear that. Also, a shout out to the other team for making a great play is awesome. That models sportsmanship from the adults. Number 5, don't stress out about the score, goals, or remember, this is soccer. Don't stress out about the score, goals, or passing. Focus on having fun. Every child develops at a different rate, but at this age, we want them to love the sport and enjoy the experience. Going back to the middle part of that, every child develops at a different rate. This is very important to understand. And this is something that if we stick to our paradigm of working the process while checking the results from time to time to make sure we're headed in the right direction, but really focusing on the process, loving your kid, nurturing your players, praising, giving them a challenging environment at practice, challenging drills, making them play faster in practice, working on the right things, coming here every week and learning and getting better as a coach. Work the process, and the chips will fall where they fall in terms of development compared to other children, or one kid versus another kid. And one thing I think that gets misunderstood a lot with children, and having been a teacher for 17 years and been a coach for many years and being a parent myself, one thing I think that we don't quite calculate out fairly or accurately is that if a child is developing a little bit behind, or their skills are a little behind another, say, teammate or another person, another peer, another child their age, it's very likely, if you're doing and working the foundations of that kid, and you're building the foundations, and you're loving and you're praising and you're there and you're supportive and you're creating a challenging environment, you're instilling discipline, you're instilling hard work, it's almost impossible for them not to be developing at a positive and good rate in all the areas, but they're not going to be developing at the same rate probably in every area. And thus, they may be behind another child, one of their peers in a certain area or a certain skill or a certain facet of the game of baseball in this case, but they may be ahead of them in other areas. And that's okay. Each child is different. Each kid is different. Each player is going to be different. But as long as you're focusing on the foundational parts of that child, of the player, everything else will take care of itself. And I think the message is, just because a player or a child is developmentally behind another kid in one specific aspect of whatever, life, the game of baseball, etc., does not mean overall they're behind. In fact, if we looked at it across the board and we looked at everything and we evaluated all the components and all the aspects and all the parts of the foundation of a child, of a baseball player, I think if you're doing it right and you're following the process that we talk about here at 80/20 Baseball, your kid's going to be on the right path. They're going to be developmentally on track when all aspects are factored in and considered. So keep that in mind, all right? Sometimes I think we get focused on one part and go, my kid's arm is kind of weak, but maybe their approach at the plate is better. Or maybe their approach at the plate's not very good, but their base running skills are a little bit better. Or maybe they're a better teammate. Or maybe they're a better catcher blocking the ball right now. Or maybe they know where to go with the ball more often and more accurately than the other players. Maybe they're better at fly balls. Maybe they're better at positioning and reading the hitters and the pitchers and reading that and anticipating where the ball is going to be hit. Maybe they're better at staying hydrated during the game, consistently hydrated. Maybe they're better at drag bunts than some of the other players, but not as good at hitting the ball off the fence. Maybe their accuracy on the mound is better than the velocity of their peers or vice versa. And we can go on, but my point is that every child develops at a different rate is right in the meat of this fifth point the email from the soccer league that I received is trying to say. And I think that's important that we look at it fairly and balanced across the board, equally across the board. And this will help us coaches and parents from chasing our tail. So before I move into part two, I want to be very clear and upfront. I've been very transparent about this. To be a good coach, it takes years and years and years to be a good to great coach. It takes years and years and years to be really, really, really good. What we're trying to do here, what I'm trying to do with the 80-20 baseball message in here in our podcast and the website is to give you the most direct route to being a successful, well-rounded, good to great coach. And that means you have to check in and stay on top of your coaching game. You got to check in. That's why an episode comes out every single week. It's so we can continue to nurture and build a better paradigm, a better understanding, a clearer path to being a successful coach, to being a great coach for all of your players, for your kid. So we talk about some of the same things over these episodes, of course, but we usually share them out in different ways, a different type of message so it can hit home to more and more of you. Also, so we can hammer these points home so they become automatic in our paradigm, our coaching paradigm. They just become our default way of coaching. And that is why you show up each week to listen to this message. It's not supposed to be a one-off, something you forget. This is a continuous developing and improvement of our coaching paradigm, meaning how we look at what we're trying to do, how we look at a practice, how we look at a drill, how we look at a team culture, how we look at specific skills like hitting and pitching, and how we look at them and how we continue to hone our ability as coaches to be better and better at coaching those aspects up. And that's why it's important to stay with it. It's not something you're going to learn from reading a book, one book or two books, or you're going to listen to 2 or 3 podcasts and become a great coach. That's not how it works. In fact, most of you will never coach long enough to learn this stuff out on your own, all of this stuff. And that's why what I'm trying to do is say, hey, all these wonderful and great coaches, all these awesome, wise coaches have come before us. I myself have been in the game of baseball for 35 years without a break. I have spent well over 2,500 days of the last 15 years working with some of the hardest to work with, the most challenging kids and youth in our country to get them to do things like exercise and sports. And I'm tying it all together here to give you that direct path. But you got to keep showing up because this is not something that's just going to be like, oh, I get it. As long as you're coaching, you have to continue to work on it. And that's why I like this once a week. We come out, we discuss it, we hit it hard, 25, 30 minutes, sometimes more, sometimes a little less, but you're getting a quality message each Tuesday that's going to keep you focused on the prize. And the prize is being able to walk out to the field more and more confident, being a better and better coach for your players in the game of baseball, in this case, youth baseball. So speaking of wise coaches, one of the wisest of all time, you've all heard his name. Overcoaching can be more harmful than undercoaching. Keep it simple. End quote. By the great JW Coach John Wooden. Coach John Wooden, the late great John Wooden. He said, quote, overcoaching can be more harmful than undercoaching. Keep it simple. The great John Wooden, considered one of the greatest coaches of all time. Now, it just hit me. As I was saying John Wooden, I thought back, John Wooden didn't win a championship until his 16th year of coaching. 16th year of coaching. In fact, that was his 16th year as a head coach. So he'd probably been coaching well before that. I didn't dig it up, but he spent 15 years as a head coach, 13 years at UCLA and 2 at Indiana State before he ever won a championship. We all remember John Wooden is basically winning every championship for 10 or 12 years. He didn't win a championship for 15 years, his first 15 years. And that's as a head coach. Almost everybody listening to this podcast is probably not going to coach till their 16th year. Or if you are, you're not quite there. You still have a little ways to go before you get to that 16th year. One of the greatest coaches of all time. Some people consider him the greatest coach of all time. I'm not going to get into the comparison thing. I think it's a little hard. Different sports, different levels, things like that. dad. But we all know he was amazing. He was great. His players loved him. They were there for him. They loved him like a father, and he won championships. But he didn't win championships for 16 years. Now, the good news for all of us is Coach John Wooden came before us, so we can learn from him. He's shared with us the secrets that got him to be a better coach. He's put it all out there in books and videos and interviews and quotes. He's put it out there. He shared it with us, so we don't have to go through that 16 years, 15 years of learning, that huge learning curve that he went through, because we have access to the wisdom that he has shared out. And this quote, you have to trust this. Over coaching can be more harmful than under coaching. Keep it simple. I told you the story. I was consulting. I was running a 10U team. So I'm running the team. The parents were paying me a good amount of money to come out and work with the team, run the team, essentially run it for them, because the dads, the moms were busy. They had their jobs. They were working. They didn't have the time, and they didn't have the knowledge that I had built up and accumulated to go out there and do it as well. So they brought me in as a coach, and I'm out there, and about 3 practices in, a dad comes up, really smart dad, very successful in the business world dad, comes up to me literally in the middle of practice, and he goes, "Hey coach, little Johnny over there keeps missing the ball like this. You probably should coach it up more." And I told him, I said, "Hey, are you bringing me out here to get the players better or to talk more? Because I can talk after every error they make. I can share out tips and strategies and give them suggestions and help after every mistake they make or after every other mistake they make. Or we can let them try to figure some of these things out on their own while creating an environment, a drill that pushes them to be better, that challenges them." See, I wasn't sitting over on a bucket. I never sat on a bucket during practice, ever. I never went to the dugout. I never stopped creating an environment where they were getting better at the things they needed to get better at. The players were getting better, and I was busting my hump. I was sweating more than the players out there as a coach. So it wasn't like I was off on my phone, sitting on a bucket in the dugout. But this particular dad thought that in his mind, and this is a massive mistake coaches make and parents make, that they think coaching equals talking more. They think the more you talk, the more you're coaching. And I couldn't be further from the truth. In fact, I think most coaches would actually have more success if they spent half of the time that they talk, not talking, and took that energy, that focus, and that time and focused on building better training drills, a better training environment, and let the game teach the kids and let the kids have some autonomy on the learning. But it's not total autonomy, because we're designing the drill, we're designing the training environment to make them learn faster, to get them better with quality reps. More quality reps, less talking. Not more talking, more quality reps. So John Wooden said, overcoaching can be more harmful than undercoaching. Keep it simple. There's 2 meanings to that. One is talking too much, and also, when we do speak, overcomplicated. And that there is going to tie into next week's episode, wink, wink. So make sure you're here next week, because we're going to talk about that specifically and how it can make us much better coaches. Moving to part 2. Part 2 is part 3, our final part of the series titled Words That Often Decrease Success. Talk about more talk is not always better, less is more. This is a little different than what we were just describing. We do not want to talk about things that are out of our control and that are going to distract us and take away from our finite amount of time to focus on getting better as coaches and players. We want our players to focus on the game and not some of these things that are outside of our circle of influence, outside of our control. In part 1, we discussed not making excuses, because that distracts us from solutions and getting better. It distracts us from taking ownership, our kids from taking ownership and getting better. Excuses are the enemy to progress. Last week, we talked about how most coaches, how most of us focus and discuss and talk and bring up the score way too much, and how that should be at a need to know basis. So go back and listen to that. And this week, we are going to talk about, we're not going to spend a whole lot of time on this because I think this is very cut and dry, but I want to bring this up because I think it's super important that we steer our conversations away from this subject, and that is the umpires, the umpires or their calls. We want to stay away from discussing the umpires, their calls, and we also want to stay away from really talking about the strike zone for the most part. If we coach up our hitters, the strike zone shouldn't adjust our approach. It shouldn't change or force us to adjust our approach. In fact, kids can only reach a certain amount of pitches with their bat and where they're standing. Thus, trying to adjust the hitting approach for a strike zone for that day or for that particular umpire, I would caution against that and simply stick with the plan A and plan 2 approach. if it's necessary and you truly feel it's necessary, simply address your players a perceived bad call, and then say, we've had calls go for us that shouldn't have, and we've had some that go against us, like this one. And that's all right, because that's how life works, and that's definitely how baseball and sports work. But if we really are good at the plate as hitters, if we're taking good swings on good pitches and following our hitting approach, if we are really good on the mound as pitchers, competing, throwing strikes, hitting the target, and we're really good defensively, making the plays we need to make, and we're good on the bases, paying attention, being aggressive, but also smart. And if we work together as a team and we support each other and have a good team culture, the umpire and the bad calls or the good calls they make are not going to make or break our season. We will. Notice how I don't dismiss the perception of the bad call. I don't dismiss the thoughts that the players are having or going to have or do have about that call. Sure, you're going to see kids voicing their frustration at the bad call. They're going to show that they're upset. All right, well, let's not dismiss it, but let's say something to the effect of, hey, maybe it should have gone our way. Maybe it shouldn't. You could even say, sure looked like it went against us. But you know what? We have definitely had calls go for us that probably shouldn't have gone for us. We all know that. And that's a part of how baseball is. That's a part of sports. It's a part of it because human beings are imperfect. You could even explain it like that. Umpires are imperfect. We're all imperfect. You could even tie it into school and say, hey, we all miss questions on tests. We all have the wrong answer from time to time, and sometimes the umpires do too. But if we're really good at the plate and we're really good on the mound and we're really good defensively and on the bases and we work together supporting one another with a quality, solid team culture, the umpire is not going to make or break our season or even a game. We will have the final say. Notice how I validate the frustration. I validate their frustration. You don't have to necessarily agree or disagree with it or at least share that, but I definitely wouldn't just come out flat out and say you disagree with the kids and that they're wrong. I would say, hey, I get it. It was a perceived bad call. I like the word perceived because unless we have high definition, slow-mo video cameras showing multiple angles, at the end of the day, it's really a perception. And I know sometimes we really truly believe. I remember years ago, I was watching a Dodger game. This was so long ago. Jeff Kent was the first baseman for the Dodgers. Probably 15 years ago, 20 years ago, probably about 20 years ago, Jeff Kent was the first. He was a second baseman, but they had him playing first. Some of you that follow baseball back then, you know that Jeff Kent did move over to first a little. And Jeff Kent, surely I had watched I'd been watching games to that point for 20 years, going to games every year, watching games all the time on TV. And I was sure on this one particular play that Jeff Kent came off the base early. It was a routine play, ground ball to shortstop. Shortstop threw it over to him. I swear he came off the base early. It was the third out of the inning. And I thought he's just getting off early to go to the dugout. Well, I happened to be recording the game on a VHS tape. Don't laugh. It was a VHS. It must have been like 20 years ago. It was a VHS tape. I used to tape Kevin Brown's starts. I used to tape his starts on a VHS. But anyways, so I had the game on VHS. I went back to rewind it and I watched it a couple more times, that same play. And I was like, oh my gosh, his foot is on the base. His foot was on the base for a split second after the ball hit the glove. But to the naked eye, it looked like he surely came off early. No way he kept his foot on long enough, but surely he did. My point is, our eyes can trick us. We all know that. You know, look at these referees in the NFL. Look at these calls that are getting overturned in Major League Baseball all the time. Look at the NFL. They're overturning calls. Not every call, of course, and maybe not even half of the calls, but they're overturning a good chunk of these calls. And thus, I think it's okay for us to share the word perceived to players. Like, we perceived that as a bad call instead of that was a bad call. Okay, maybe you're 98, 99, 100% certain. But let's maybe just stick to that word. I really think it works well because at the end of the day, we're not going to go back and change it. It is what it is. It's already done. It's a done and moving on. But that doesn't mean we can't address it. But I do think that sliding in that word perceived bad call. Yeah, hey, we perceived it as a bad call. Maybe it was. Sure, it seemed like it. Something like that. It sure seemed like it. I think having those words as part of our vocabulary, as part of our dialogue are really big because it makes the players feel like, yeah, you're on their side, but also we're not 100% sure because we don't 100% know definitively unless you got a Hawkeye or TrackMan system out there on your Little League field that can track that. But nonetheless, words and dialogue that often decrease success is the series. And talking about calls or the umpires, this is a little different than making excuses, but this is talking about it. Sometimes they go hand in hand, but just talking about the umpires, talking about calls, talking about this, talking about that. when it comes to the officiating. We're taking our focus away from the things that are really in our control. And at the end of the day, our hitting, our pitching, our catching, our base running, our defense, that's going to make or break the season. Our teamwork, that's going to make or break our season, and not the umpires. My estimation is that 75% of talking to the umpire, on a side note here, by coaches is counterproductive. So this is specific to those situations where we as coaches go and talk to the umpire about a call or this, that, and the other. I'd say 75% of it's a waste of time and it's counterproductive. And if you haven't listened to it already, go back about 30 episodes and I broke down an exact two-step process to knowing exactly how to talk to umpires and when to talk to umpires. Laid it out. It's a very clear-cut, proven system that works, and it covers every situation. All right, so I'm going to throw in two bonus things that I think we talk too much about as coaches in the coaching community, and those two things, the weather and field conditions. The weather and field conditions. Here's the thing. The weather is the same for both teams, and the field condition is the same for both teams, as we all know. Now, these a lot of times can go together, but not always. The wind doesn't affect field condition, but the wind can play havoc on fly balls and things like that. The sun being in a player's eyes that causes a drop ball or a misplay. The field condition, fields being wet or muddy or whatever, or there not being a fence, or the fence not being far enough back, or the backstop is really close to home plate or really far back, or whatever. The grass is too long or too short, or the sprinklers had been on all night and there's some puddles. These conditions apply to both teams. These conditions apply to both teams for the most part. The sun is in the same spot for their team on defense as it is for your team on defense. I get it. The amount of balls that are hit into the sun aren't always going to be equal, and the bad bounces aren't always going to be this, that, and the other. We don't want to talk about the weather. We don't want to talk about the field conditions unless it's an injury related thing or a tactical thing, a strategy. We don't want to blame. We don't want to say how it was the field conditions' fault. And that kind of ties into the excuses, but we really don't want to talk about that stuff more than we have to. And the two times we want to talk about field conditions or the sun, the weather, or when it can help us to better play off of those conditions, to have a plan, a strategy to be better. And the second time to discuss this is if it's a safety issue. If it's a safety issue that we can prevent or minimize because we bring it up and discuss it, that's great. So we discuss some of these conditions, bad field conditions, bad weather, when it comes to injury prevention, minimizing safety risks, and when it comes to some strategy as to how to work around the field conditions, how to work around the weather to have more success. All right, coaches, that wraps up part 3 of our 3-part series in a coaching community, in the baseball coaching community, where we share out things to say, more things to coach up, more ways to coach it up. Sometimes we got to take away. Less is more. And a lot of times I think the best coaches take away a lot more than the other coaches. It's not that they add more. It's that they know when to take away and talk about things less, or only on a need to know basis or a need to address basis. I look forward to being back here with all of you next week on the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass, the 80-20 Baseball Podcast, where we are trying to master the main big needle movers, in this case, by doing less to achieve more success as coaches. And next week, I'll share out the top 5 coaching tweets of the month and one surefire way to tell which coaches are true masters of coaching and how we can all get to that level in this particular aspect of coaching. So I'm going to talk about one surefire way to tell that coaches are true masters and how we can all do what they're doing. Support the podcast in the link in the show notes summary so you can support it, keep it rolling, ad-free, commercial-free. Follow me on Twitter, 8020_baseball, 8020_baseball on Facebook too. Head over to the website, 8020baseball.com, 8020baseball.com. Email me, Coach Bo at 8020baseball. A lot of ways to get in touch, a lot of ways to follow along. And until next week, take care of your health, take care of your families, your close friends, and take this information out to the field. Take it out to the field. Put the plan together now, write it out, script it out in your head on paper right now. Take it out to the field and you will have more confidence as a coach. Thank you for being a coach, and until next week, adios.
This has been the 80-20 Baseball Masterclass. Take it to the field.